Card making doesn't have to be complicated. It can be super easy, as you're going to see in this tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to take 4 napkins and turn them into personalized cards. So these napkins I received from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There is a wide selection of Easter, spring florals. Go to the website, link in the description box below, and check out the variety. I'm sure you're going to find something that you're going to love. So each napkin can make 4 cards, and it's great. So I'm going to show you 4 different cards to give you some ideas. This napkin is called Bunny Portrait. And first, I just cut off the one panel. I'm peeling off the excess and figuring out which size card. I've got 6x6 cards and 5x7 card bases, and I'm just making a decision of which one it fits best. Then I'm taking my liner brush with a little bit of water. You could use a water brush, and I'm water cutting the excess off. Now, I could have just put this on with the green background, but I opted to paint my background because, well, it's mixed media and I want to do some things different. Now, the first 2 cards are very similar in how I prepare the background, and the last 2 are similar in the techniques that I use. So you're getting lots of bang for your buck in watching this video. So I've put the card base down and I'm giving it a coat of gesso. This is just preparing the card base to take the paint and the wet medium that I may be using. It kind of bolsters up the card and helps blend the paint. Once that's dry, I'm gluing down my napkin. I fold up half of it, press it down very carefully with my fingers, and then put the fluid matte medium underneath, do the other side, and then I put some on top. Now remember, the napkins get very fragile and some get even more so fragile. So use a soft brush and go carefully. Now here I'm painting the background. And yes, I'm going with green, but I'm making the green a little bit more lively than what was on the napkin. I'm taking some brilliant yellow and some hooker's green with some white gesso, and I'm putting it on in a way kind of wet and wet, just kind of tapping my brush. So there's a lot of texture that's there that wasn't going to be there with the napkin. And remember, part of my goal of using a napkin is to use it as the base, use it mainly as the focal point. But then I want to add my own touches. And this is one way of doing that. It's a very easy, simple background, but there's a lot more interest because the way I've mixed those colors. I'm just going along and I'm really happy with this because you don't have to do a lot of complicated techniques to get a very effective card. And with a card, you really don't want, if you're making multiples, you don't want to spend a lot of time on it. So I'm going in there and just, even going over some of that pussy willow wreath that's there. I know I'm going to be overpainting that, so I'm not too worried. I contemplated keeping the center part white. Then I said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to put the green in there." Now, I love this bunny, and I could cut it out of the wreath and use it just as a focal point, add some flowers and do some other things with it. Also, this could be an art journal page or a tag. So don't be limited on the substrate. I'm doing it on cards, but you don't have to. And likewise, if you don't have this napkin, go and look through your napkins and find something similar. So once that's dry, I'm using an emery board that I got from the Dollar Tree and just cutting off the excess napkin. Now I want to brighten up those pussy willows, so I'm just taking globs of white gesso, you could use white paint, and just painting over where the pussy willows are. Sometimes I'm adding more pussy willows. This is brightening it up. It looks like it's now been painted. It's added some texture, and I'm loving the effect. And really, this is super easy. I'm just using a liner brush. Pick a brush that has a fine tip, and away you go. Nothing here so far that all of you can't do. Now I'm making 4 different cards, but if I was doing a multiple make, I would kind of do this in um, assembly line fashion. And I could have done a different color background for each one. I think that would have looked really, really nice. Now I'm taking some watered down paint, brown paint, golden paint, and just thinning it down with water and painting it over the bunny just to make those colors a little bit deeper. I find sometimes on the napkins they're very pastel, and I just want to tweak those colors, make them stand out a little bit more. But I water it down because I don't want the thickness of the paint. So here I'm adding a little bit of pink in the ears, and then I'm painting the bow. It's a very dull red. I just want to boost that color as well. I put the bunny off to the side instead of the middle because I thought I could put a sentiment on that side, and I just like offsetting things. I think they look just more appealing to the eye. Now I'm taking some of that dark green, that hooker's green, and I'm edging the page. I thought maybe I could get away with the dark green, but it's not giving me enough oomph for edging the page. So I do come back, and you'll see me doing that with black acrylic paint, and I'm just edging the card. I just needed to frame it. And the black really ties in with some of the black that's in the focal point. I think it'd be really nice to have a paint party and give everybody one of these napkins, one section of this bunny napkin, and a card base, and see what everybody creates with it. Just adding a little bit of black shading here and there. Again, just to tweak it up. Then I grabbed this Tile Mania stencil from the Crafter's Workshop using the dark hooker's green. I'm just adding a little bit of that stenciling to the background on the outside, and I loved it. I really was thinking I was just going to leave it with the green and all the textured painting that I did, but I love this. Just another subtle, small scale patterning in the background that just adds to it. Then I went through some Easter quotes. I typed them out with my word program and cut them out, and I'm just gluing that down with fluid matte medium. So don't worry, be hoppy. But here's where you could personalize it. You could handwrite, you could just not put a sentiment at all, just write your message inside. You could put whatever you want. And that's why I love making cards with napkins, because you can just personalize it. And I'm taking this is a Sakura glaze pen in black. Love it. It's dimensional, a bit glossy, so it adds a little something something. I've also splattered with gold paint here. Dotting the I's. and outline the sentiment. And there we have it. There's the napkin, the stencil, and the finished card. I absolutely love it. And I'm not a fan of green, but I think the green was a good choice. This one is called Splashy Bunny. So the first thing I do when I have a napkin is, and the focal image is on there, I cut out the focal image or rough cut it. This allows me to try it on any substrate, art journal page, wood panel, and make a decision about how I'm going to put it together. But I release it from the napkin, the square napkin format. It just makes it easier for my brain to figure out what I want to do with it. So here I'm doing what I did with the other one. I peeled off the excess layers, and now I'm just water cutting right around the bunny. This gives a deckled edge and makes it easier. Now look at how easy that fits in there, where if it was square, that would complicate my eyes. So again, I'm just gluing it down onto what was a gessoed card base. This one's a 5x7, and I'm very gently putting a coat of matte medium on top. That seals it. That also prepares it for any paint. So now I want to paint the background, and I thought I'm going very neutral. I'm going to put unbleached titanium and white gesso and get that same mottled effect that I did on that first card. I glued down the napkins on both of these first because I don't want the color of whatever color I use for the background to come through the napkin and distort my focal image. So that's why I glued them down first when the background is white. It just makes it easier. So here I'm getting right in close to the deckled edge. I want some darker spots with the unbleached titanium. I want some lighter ones with the white, and I'm just kind of putting it in. You see that I've made a pocket there with copy paper, and I slide the card in it, and that protects the card from getting the paint and the mess of what's on my table on the rest of my card. So I have three more. I could make three more card bases or three more cards with this napkin. Then I decided, they have, it's called Splashy Bunny because there's splatters on that card. And I thought, I'm going to do some smooshing. So this is what one of the layers that I peeled off. I'm just using it to cover it up. And I'm using that color and I start smooshing. And well, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I saw in my head. This is not what I like. But so I grab a baby wipe and I'm thinking, okay, just wipe this off. And what was left was a pink tinged background with the unbleached titanium that I really didn't dislike. And then I came in with some more of that color, getting closer to the bunny to make this lightly tinged pink background. So again, with this one, I could have put a blue background or a green background. The pink goes with the flowers. The unbleached titanium would have worked. So you have a lot of options, and you can do four cards with one napkin, four different colored backgrounds. And while I wouldn't have chosen to put pink or purple on, I really like it in the end. So now I grab my Inktense blocks and I'm just deepening the color of the eggs and the bunny rabbit. Just like I did on the first one where I used brown paint, brown and golden paint, and thinned it down to just tweak those colors. So I look at the swatch list and I match it. Inktense blocks are ink and they're very translucent. So I find they work really well in mixed media for those reasons. So I've just deepened the colors and now I'm going to overpaint Is this a hyacinth that the bunny's holding? And I'm putting paint or white gesso. I'm globbing that on. That's going to be the highlights. And then I'm coming in with some of the pink color. And actually, I used deep violet, I believe, which was the perfect match. And so it looks like the flower is texturized and it's painted. So I've added my personal touches to it. So you can see this card and the other one are very similar in all the steps. And the last two, stay to the end because the last two are even easier than these two. Then I grab my liner brush, I've got the white gesso, and I'm just adding this detail. Again, this is adding texture as well as brightening the whites. Then I'm going with my brown paints, watered down, just adding a little bit extra to the bunny, just like I did the first one. So I hope you see that it doesn't matter what the napkin is. If you love these napkins, go to Ninny's Napkins and nab them and get them. If it's too late for this Easter, you've got them ready set for next Easter. I've discovered that what you love this year may not be there. So if you really love something, grab it, nab it now because it may not be there next season. And I'm adding some shading. If you're going to Ninny's Napkins, check in the description box, go through that link, but there's also a coupon code, a one-time coupon code. So if you're find that you're going to be spending some money there, might as well save some. Now I'm using this dotted ring stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm using white gesso. You could use white paint, and I'm just adding, again, a very fine pattern, just a whisper of the pattern. Now, this is a 6x6 stencil, so you're going to see me, I'm lining it up and as I move it along. And you'll see that I've covered up my bunny. I don't want to get this stenciling on the bunny. So I put the excess ply that I peeled off, that I cut out the shape of the bunny, and that's just going to keep the paint from being on the bunny. But because it's permanent, what you've used, if you do get stencil on it and you don't have a mask, you can just use a baby wipe and get it off before it completely dries without smudging anything underneath, which is why I love using stuff that is permanent. It just makes life so much easier. I like how the shape of the stencil matches the shape that is in that green egg. So I do pay attention to those kind of things. You want the colors that you have in the background to go with the color of the focal image. You want the patterns that are in the focal image to resonate with the patterns that you put in the background. But if you look at your stencils, you'll find a motif or a pattern there somewhere. Now, if I was doing this on a canvas or an art journal page that wasn't going to go in the mail, I would put modeling paste through this stencil and then have that texturized. Adding a few more details with my stylus on this blue egg. Just didn't want to leave it blank. And if I wanted to change the color of the egg, I wanted to use a different background or just do a coat of gesso, let that dry, and then come back and cover it with whatever color you want. Remember, the napkin is the start, and you can change it up however you want. Cut what different parts out. I could have taken out the eggs and cut out eggs out of gel prints and glued them on. Splattering with gold. Then I grab my wooden stamps, and here I'm using Payne's Gray, which is a blue gray. The black, this is very pastel-y background. The black I thought was just going to be a little too harsh. So I love using my letter stamps because, again, you can personalize the message. And one of the things that I've learned with the letter stamps is I use acrylic paint because if I make a mistake, I can come in and erase it because I know everything underneath it is permanent. So I have some wiggle room and I can personalize the message. And again, if you don't like sentiments, you could have left that out. But who doesn't like sentiments? It's kind of my thing. So if you've watched my channel, you know that. Here I'm just doing with the Naples, or not the Naples yellow, the Payne's Gray. Again, I wanted everything to work together. Grab my fine line applicator bottle this time, and I'm doing some faux stitching around the outside edge. Just adds a little fine detail. Just be sure not to put your wrist in the wet paint. So we're just about halfway through this video. You've got another 2 cards coming up. And you're going to want to stay to the end because the last one, I think, is my favorite. And FYI, I think it's the easiest one too. Then I decided that I needed a little more pink in that background, so I grabbed my script stamp. I've got the deep violet color that I'd use in the flower, and I'm just adding another little pattern, a little bit of color. I just needed to brighten it. It just looked too flat somehow. See there, it kind of smudged a little bit. I come in, I can wipe it back with the baby wipe and then restamp. And there's the card, the napkin, and the stencil. How easy. Do you have a favorite so far? Was it number 1 or number 2? So on this one, I am putting a coat of fluid matte medium. Oh, my favorite is this one, not the last one. This napkin is called Vibrant Spring, and the colors are to die for. I'm just making sure that I have enough for my 5x7 card. It's a little more than one panel, so I just want to have a little bit covering the card and just a little excess. So I put a coat of fluid matte medium on the card base. I did not gesso this card base. And that is off to the side and that needs to dry. You can use a heat tool to dry it. I just went on. I peeled off the excess napkins. I'm cutting this one up and then I'm just positioning it. I want that flower at the top to be there, line it up, and then I am ironing it on with my mini iron. I'll link the mini iron in there. This isn't the name brand one. It was kind of an off one brand, but I love it. It's perfectly usable at the price point. So this is the iron decoupage technique. The iron heat reactivates the glue and gives you perfect adherence to the background. Could this not be easier? Using the emery board from Dollar Tree to get off the excess, you could use a pair of scissors, but this emery board works super easy. Can't beat the price point. And look at that bright colors. Now I'm putting a coat of fluid matte medium on top. I want to seal this because I tend to overpaint. Now, when you put this on, the wetness may reactivate and the napkin can lift a little bit. It also gets fragile, so you got to use a soft brush and a gentle touch. Anytime you're putting wet stuff on top of a napkin, you got to be mindful of that. Now it's kind of lifted a little bit there. So once it's dry, I go back in and I put the parchment paper on top and I iron it again and it gets rid of that. And even though the matte medium's on top, it doesn't react, it doesn't stick to the parchment paper. I thought for sure that that's what was going to happen when I first did that. It didn't. Now I'm just edging this with black on my sponge, my Ranger blending foam. Gives it a nice border. I just love the bright colors of this. So I grab my Through the Garden Gate sentiment pack. These ones are actually printed on sticker paper. I've resized 4 cards. And so I'm just going to cut off some of that excess white. You can also break up the sentiment however you want. If you don't like the arrangement that I have on the digital sentiment pack, you can rearrange it, manipulate it to fit your thing. And I put let joy burst forth like flowers in spring. I love this one. And it was so easy. This would be a very quick multiple make. You could make them, get them in the mail before you even knew it. So here I'm just peeling and sticking. I have some 5x7 canvas boards that are magnetic. I am going to do the exact same thing on the canvas board, and then it is going to be a fridge magnet. These colors to die for. Grab my Sakura glaze pen, and I'm outlining the sentiment. Now my only problem is I like this so much that I don't want to send it out. I want to keep it. But I have more napkins. I got 2 of this so I can make myself one. And then I'm just adding some black details to the center of the 3 main flowers. But I've opted to not overpaint. The colors are bright and vibrant. And this is dimensional and glossy here. So it just adds a little extra something to the card. And then I do some faux stitching around this one just to finish it off. Thank you so much to all those people who sent me well wishes after my hand surgery. As you can see, the latex glove is off and I'm able to create. Now there's the napkin and the card. Hands up if you'd like to get this one in the mail. So now we're going to do the same iron-on decoupage technique. This is a layer of fluid matte medium, which I then put to the side and dry. I'm using this napkin. It's called Egg Painting. And again, the bright, brilliant colors are what drew me to this. I made sure that it fits. There's my mini iron. Once everything's dry, I use the mini iron to iron it on. So if I was doing lots, I'd do all the card bases in fluid matte medium, cut out the napkins to size to fit the card base that I've chose, iron them all on, use the emery board on all of them, and then personalize them with a sentiment or some overpainting. So this one I'm actually going to end up doing a little bit more to than the last one. That's an option. Here I'm just giving it a coat of fluid matte medium to seal it. Once it's dry, here's where I show I re-iron it to get rid of any bubbles and flatten it out. Not sure why this works. In my mind it shouldn't, but it does, so I'm running with it. Beautiful. So right off the bat, I do not like that these two eggs on the on that side are the same color. So I'm changing it. I'm using my Inktense blocks and I'm turning this green egg into a blue egg. I just thought, "Ugh, why do they have two green ones here?" I didn't like the setup the way it was, so I'm the artist. I get to change it. I add a little bit of gesso. It was kind of giving it a patchy look when I put the Inktense on because it's a napkin. So I've just added a little bit of gesso and that just kind of smoothed it off and took that. But once it dries, the pigmentation from the Inktense blocks also change. Now, I wanted to add a little detail to the eggs. So I grabbed my fine line applicator bottle. This one has white acrylic paint that I thinned down, and I'm doing faux stitching around all the eggs. It's a really easy thing to do. You could use um, your Uniball Signo with a white or a Posca pen or other gel pen that you have. I like using the fine line applicator bottle because you get a very opaque white. So again, super simple, but effective. If you haven't used these fine line applicators, check them out. I'll put the link in Amazon. They are easy to squeeze. There's ones that are more the shape of a pen. They're thicker. I have not tried those yet. I think I might just order them and see. But I have, some problems with my hands and this is very easy. It's a little bit trial and error, thinning the paint correctly. I add a little bit of paint, then I add a little bit of water, trial and error, squeeze it through, see. You want it so that you don't have to press super hard on it, but it doesn't just seep out of the tip. It has a needle that goes in that closes it up so it doesn't clog. I have these for months and months and months on end. I only mix up maybe a third of the bottle at a time. A little goes a long way. So you'll notice that there's some blue in the background and some pink. That was part of the napkin background. And in a minute, I am going to take that and add to it. I think again, it was quinacridone magenta, and I'm just basically adding some paint splotches where I thought there should be some. But you could have just left it alone the way it was. And here again, I'm adding a little bit of gesso to get that cloudy, soft pastel look. So I'm just adding a little bit of the pink, a little bit of the blue, where I think there should have been. And I'm edging with black, just like you saw me do with the third card. So a lot of the finishing techniques, they're the same on each one. So let me know in the comment section which of these cards is your favorite. Which are your favorite two? Thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. I hope you have fun making cards or other mixed media projects. Here I put up the sentiment sending extra joy. Now I need to figure out who's getting which card and putting it in the mail. Until next time, go get creative.